Right, when you're a bet, and we're just waiting for you to walk in. So, okay. Yom bet. We just said it's Yom bet. We'll wait for you to walk in. So so it's 2, 4, 6, 7 lines from the bottom. And I told you there's a whole slew of statements by Amar Rabba bar Machasya, Amar Rav Chama bar Guraya, Amar Rav, one after the other, which all are sundry and diverse and unrelated really to what they are, except they haven't been said by this trilogy of Rabbanim. So the last one had to deal with about a statement. We did 2 of them. One was really about a matana, about telling. The second one had to do with the story where he said over a statement of Rav, and he got two pieces of meat, and the guy said, if I had known, would have given me another one. And then the last thing we said about the division between Yaakov and his children, because he treated one a little more equally. So the whole story came down. They went down to Mitzrayim, and as Tosfos pointed out, if it hadn't happened, they would have gone to Mitzrayim anyway, but it would have been perhaps in a different format, or it would have been not as severe, or whatever. And now this is V'amar Rav bar Machasya Rav Chama bar Guraya. So Amar Rav L'olam Yechazer Adam V'yeshev Be'ir Sheyishivasa Krova. One should always try to scout out and live in a city that was recently inhabited. That's what it means. In other words, move to a new neighborhood and not to an old neighborhood.
Okay. He's saying move to a new neighborhood.
Right. Yeshivasa Krova does not mean it's nearby, right? It means that it's closer to when it was developed. So better to move to a new city than move to a city that's been around for a long time. That sounds like counterintuitive.
You would think so, yeah.
You would think so that a city that's been around for a while has more services, is more developed. Yeah. People in the new areas.
It's got
right, but people in the new areas, they're pioneers. They may deal with a lot. It's like Thornhill, right? Okay, it's only now maturing. So, but why? So he's going to say because the longer a city is around, it's actually pretty damning about people, the more it is likely to have greater amount of sinners in the city by virtue of its history. It has a track record. Not every person is going to be a tzaddik, so it means the zechus of the city will be, less significant, or the city will be less desirable, because when you look at the famous citizens going back, you'll find more evildoers in an older city than you will in a newer city. Of course, you're going to see you'll find less righteous people too.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct, but
don't tell us the people down south.
Well,
Especially since.
Right.
What this is probably trying to say is that there's some sort of a measure of the amount of sin a city can have.
Or more importantly, that we are judged as individuals. But practically speaking, you get pulled along by the mob. In other words, it's harder to be a righteous person in Sodom than it is to be in Jerusalem, let's say. Right now, there were righteous people. There weren't 50, there weren't 10, okay, but there was Lot. Right? The story of Lot is the one who went out to help people and so forth, but that would made him the iconoclast. He was different. And even he, you see, fell into the type of sin with his own daughters that could have only happened after having been influenced by the society morals that he lived with. Had he lived in a righteous place, it would have been unthinkable, even if he had drunk. But the point of it being, you'll see in a moment how the Lot story actually figures into it. The point of it being that you can't be righteous. I guess we all have our own, good points and bad points, right? Sins and what are called sins and mitzvos and everything, and we don't know how they get calculated. But the reality is the world runs along in a way of nature. Mm-hmm. So then there are certain natural rules. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to destroy a city like Sodom. You may be a great person, but you may not get out. Lot only gets out because of Avraham. He had a great schus from this uncle of his. Had it not been Avraham, he would have been swept away. What did he do wrong? He was righteous. The answer was, well, you're in the wrong place. You can't change being in the wrong place simply because you're a righteous person. Right?
But still not clear why a newer city is more righteous, though. That's the problem.
So he explains it.
No, it's true. No, what you say is certainly true. It doesn't do you any good to be righteous in an evil city. And
No, he says just inevitably. Look, inevitably there's. Look, it's it's use the term tabula rasa, right?
Right, maybe that's
A young child starts with a clean slate. Okay, when you deal with an older person, you can always change, but you have all this baggage you have to get around. Now you probably say, "Well, you got good baggage too." Of course, you got good baggage, but somehow the bad baggage pulls you down. Child has not done life yet, so there's a better opportunity to kind of make real change quicker and better and more radically. But that's the concept. As he saw, read again. Because its habitation was more closer to the present, was shorter. It has less sins. Shenemar, okay, and it actually quotes it from Lot, not the Lot part, not the story of Lot that you think it is, but actually the second half of the Lot story is Lot is coming out with his wife turns around and she turns into a pillar of salt, and he's got his daughters with him, and his son-in-laws don't want to go with him, and Lot says, I can't go any further. It's too much.
Go to the mountains.
Right.
No.
He says no. He knows. Lot says Shneimar. He knows here azot krava lanu shama v'hi mitzar. It's I will. The city is close, is nearby, and it's mitzar. It's I guess protected. And so what does it mean krova? So you normally read it to be that he's tuck it out. He can't make it all the way. He says, "Can I just?"
It certainly sounded like
Right.
that in the story.
Well, in the Medrash it doesn't, right? So my krova, if you think it means that Lot is telling the angels it's nearby, well, so Ilay Makrova, the Makarve Vizuta. So if you say that Krova means it's nearby and it's a short distance to go, Zuta is small distance. You can see it's nearby. Why does the Torah have to record that Lot is saying, I want to go to the city because it's near? He could just say, he says to the angels, I want to go to the city. Everybody can see it. It's right here. We don't want to keep going. We want to go here. So, in the Torah's approach to being somewhat curt in language, if Lot is underscoring the fact that it's near, he doesn't mean near geographically. He must mean it is near in terms of being inhabited. So, I want to go to the city which is newer than the city that I'm getting out of, which is Sodom. So Ela Mitoch says, and it's of course a medrash, Mitoch Shivasa Krova, because it was inhabited earlier, Avonoseha Mutzarim, the sins are lesser, they're smaller, there's less amount of sins. That's why Lot wants to go there. He realized being in a bad place is not good. It's not going to happen again. He wants to be in a place that's newer and has less sins. Now, of course, how newer is this? What's these called? Zohar than Sodom. How much newer could this be?
It says, I want to have mutzarim. They're clearly playing on the word mitzar, right?
Yes. So, but how much new could it be? So the Gemara says, once again, this is this agadic nature type of Gemara. So Amrav Avin, Mikra, Dichsiv Imol Tana Shama. He says, I want to escape there, please. So Na is a gematria. Right? Don't just think the gematria is made by much later Chassidus Rabbanim.
No.
Gemara told us. So Na is Nun Aleph, which is 51. Right? Na b'gematria Nun v'chad, 50 and 1. Have is. B'shel Sodom Nun Beis, and Sodom was 52 years old when it was destroyed. The whole Sodom was destroyed. And Rashi goes through a long discussion why and how you know that it was only 52 years in Sodom. How one can figure that out. The article actually spells that out pretty clearly, but.
Well, Sodom enjoyed peace for a while.
Well, not that much. So let's read the Gemara, then we'll go back and we'll go maybe with someone has an article. We'll go through it. So Zohar is 51 because that's the Gematria of Na. B'shel Sodom Nun Beis is 52. B'shalvasa Chavav, and the good time or the peaceful time of Sodom was altogether 26 years. This chapter of Sodom was a city that popped up and had a rough time because there were 4 kings against 5 kings, and they had to serve the king, Kadal Omer, and then there was a fight and so forth. By the time the fight was over and everybody settled down, they had 26 more good years until it came apart, until it was decimated, until it was incinerated. But the whole city itself only existed for 52 years.
It's only 1 year older than Zohar.
Right, that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point of this Gemara, this Agada Gemara.
1 year.
Even one year is more important, right? So let's just finish that. Maybe if we have an article, I'll read it through to you. We'll read it together maybe. So we know that there were the 4 kings against the 5 kings. For 12 years they served Gedal Omer. And for 13 years they rebelled. And on the 14th year, right, Gedal Omer, and there was the whole fight, the 5 kings against the 4 kings. So you have this whole period of time, which is 12, right? Plus 13 is 25. Plus the next year was when the fight is 26. And if you believe that the whole existence of Sodom was 52 years old, 52 years long, that only leaves 26 years afterwards that things settle down.
Absolutely.
So we're assuming that the history as recorded is not simply an isolated event; it's the whole story of Sodom. Which, by the way, the I guess the silver lining in this Gemara means that don't think that God keeps wickedness around for that long. Right? In other words, if you read about the Sodom, you say, "Well, these guys been having a good time," and now God finally came back after millennia, centuries, and He's going to destroy it. It looks like it's a short period of time. But the premise, of course, is that the whole city of Sodom only exists for 52 years altogether, which makes it 1 year longer, than the city of Zoar. So even 1 year is still a milah. Okay. Who's got the article? There's a very long footnote. Yeah, okay.
The length of Sodom's existence can be calculated as follows. Until the dispersion, all the world's inhabitants lived in Babylonia.
Right.
They subsequently spread out and built cities elsewhere.
Correct.
Hence, it may be assumed that Sodom, which was a major city located outside of Babylonia, was founded soon after the dispersion.
Correct.
The date of the dispersion is alluded to in the verse. The name of the first son of Aver was Peleg.
Peleg, right.
For in his days the world was dispersed.
Ki b'yamav niflaga haaretz.
Right. Peleg shares the same root as Haflaga, dispersion. This verse cannot mean merely that the dispersion took place sometime in the middle of Peleg's days,
right.
That is, neither at his birth nor at his death, because in the middle of Peleg's days, because the allusion then would be too vague.
Right.
The Torah's purpose in stating this allusion is surely to give a specific date, rather than a wide time frame. It must mean that the dispersion occurred either at the beginning of Peleg's days, that is when he was born, or at the end of his days, when he died.
And in hindsight, he was called Peleg.
Right.
If it's at the end of his days. On his deathbed, they say, "Oh, you're dying, and we're being dispersed, you're Peleg."
What was his name before that?
Who knows? Leroy. I don't know what his name was. Joe.
It's a nickname they gave him, yeah.
What was Moshe's name before the daughter of Paro called him Moshe?
What's the meaning of Peleg?
Peleg, actually, the Peleg means to disperse, haflaga. Okay, so that makes sense. In other words, and in fact, the Torah says he's called Peleg, ki biyamav niflaga haaretz. In his day, the world was dispersed. When the only dispersion we know about at that point in the book of Bereshis is about Bavel, Migdal Bavel. But we don't know where in his life this happens.
Yeah.
So
Right. So it's either the
beginning or end.
Right.
We know that the dispersion did not take place when Peleg was born, because the descendants of his younger brother, Yaktan, were among the people dispersed. See Rashi. The verse must therefore mean that the dispersion occurred when Peleg died.
Mm-hmm.
It can also be calculated that Peleg died in the 48th year of Abraham's life.
Correct.
This calculation is based on Bereshit 11:19, which states the length of the generations between Peleg and Abraham. Thus, Abraham
we're going to have to believe him without going through all the psukim there, okay?
Yes, sure.
Thus, Abraham was in his 48th year at the time of the dispersion and the founding of Sodom, which occurred soon afterwards, as stated above. The destruction of Sodom took place when Abraham was 99 years old.
Great.
This is evident from the fact that the angels proceeded to destroy Sodom after telling Abraham that he would have a son in a year's time. And Abraham was 100 years old when Yitzchak was born.
Right.
Absolutely.
Since Sodom was founded when Abraham was in his 48th year and destroyed when he was 99, it evidently endured for 52 years.
Right, so it's 99 minus 47 in his 48th year. 99 minus 47, he's in his 48th year.
Even 47 from 9, I see, I got you.
47 from 99 is 52.
47.
Right, he's 47 in his 48th year.
I got you.
Okay, so there's a bit of a A bit of a hedge
They
there about that,
forced it a
the
little.
final year, that final year is being forced
You
in.
won't take the time to go through, except that, I mean, we're talking the Migdal Bavel, I'm just thinking
The
of.
premise is, before Migdal Bavel, everybody lived in Bavel.
Yeah, no, I'm willing to buy that, I'm just trying to, I'd have to add up all the years, because it seemed to me Avram was a long time afterwards, but evidently not that long, right? It says Bavel, it says
So Avram also lived through Migdal Bavel.
Right, so at the end
Where does
of,
it say?
correct, so in other words,
That's what I'm
I
saying.
guess
Where
Avram
does-
lives also to Migdal Bavel, yeah, I guess so.
Which
So-
is very unusual,
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying, it's really.
because that would mean that Ur Kasdim and Haran
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
happened after Migdal Bavel.
Yeah, well, that had to happen because it says, when Migdal Bavel says, that's when the Haflagah took place and people settled in different countries and had different languages. But what about all that time between? You're saying he was 48 already, so obviously a lot of people were living in the, was Abraham, like you said.
It looks
Where
like-
was Ur Kasdim?
like it compresses history, correct?
Ur Kasdim
Yeah,
is-
it really does.
Ur Kasdim is in Bavel, right? But still, Ur Kasdim is in Bavel.
Yeah.
But, you know, it depends how wide.
So this is the end of Parshas Noah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, there's so many,
It-
there's 10 generations.
It's a little,
right?
it's a little fishy.
Anyway, it doesn't matter, whatever, as I say, well, let's not, I said I do it privately after, I don't want to stop. It certainly strikes me as.
A little fishy.
Yeah, well, not just that, we assume that the kings only came to Sodom the first time they enslaved them, only the first day they were built practically, because that says 12 years, and then they rebelled 13 years, so, again, whatever it
Okay,
is,
so-
it's a mitzvah.
So here's what we got. Chapter 11 is the story of Bavel.
Yeah,
Okay, they rebel,
Huh?
and they get dispersed.
right,
And the second half of chapter 11 is this whole genealogy.
Right.
Shem.
Mhm.
Okay, Shem, this is going back earlier to the Parsha of Noah.
yeah.
Follow Shem is followed by Arpachshad. Arpachshad is followed by Shelach. Shelach is followed by Aver. Aver is followed by Peleg. Right?
Right.
And the problem with all these guys is they live these extremely long lives.
Right, exactly.
Right. So you have to say that it's not simply it's a genealogy that overlaps.
Well, some of them, they do overlap
Correct.
a lot, actually.
So in other words, they may have given birth when they were 30 or 20,
Absolutely.
and then they lived for 900 years.
If you look
So
at
the
time-
next guy could be the same kind of thing.
For sure.
Right.
If you look at Jewish timelines, you find out shockingly how many people, like more recent, were still alive when these other people were like 900 years old.
What I wanted to just point out is after Peleg,
Yeah?
there's only 3 generations: Reu, Srug,
Ah.
Nahor, and then Nahor is of course the father of Abraham.
Avram, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
but when is the Migdal, Bavel? What is it? Again, we're taking
So
Peleg.
we're assuming that Migdal
Yeah,
Bavel
yeah,
is the
is
end
end
of
of
the life
Peleg.
of Peleg, because it
Exactly.
says,
No, it doesn't say Peleg, does it? It just says, in the
It was
Migdal,
called Peleg.
it says everybody with this verse, but I don't think it necessarily ties in with
it's
Peleg.
called
right?
someplace, Kibyom Mov Nifl Gaharetz.
Oh, yeah?
Right, correct.
Yeah.
Vaychi Ever Arba Shloshim Shana Be'olas Peleg. Vaychi Ever Achrei Hodos Peleg. Shloshim Shana
Okay.
Ve'arba Me'ashana Vayolad Banim Ubanos. It doesn't say it here.
I don't know where it says. Must say it somewhere.
It says it somewhere.
Maybe
Okay.
it's Rashi.
Like I said, let's,
No, it's a pasuk somewhere.
we have to go on.
Anyways, we're gonna go on. That's so.
Let's go on, we'll find it.
So at any rate, that the premise of it all is really you're better off living in a new neighborhood,
city.
new
Even
city.
if it's only a year.
So
you're
are.
right.
So are is supposed to
So
snow.
are.
1 year difference.
Soar is
Wasn't
better than
Soar
snow.
also destroyed?
I'm sorry.
Wasn't Soar also
No,
destroyed?
no, I don't think.
I guess they all were, but I guess this was still inhabitable. He goes into the cave. He's in the cave in Soar.
No, I think he ran, no, I think.
No, it
Oh,
wasn't.
he leaves the cave and he goes.
He leaves Sohar.
The
He was
city
safe
is-
in Sohar in the meantime.
Right.
Then he left Sohar, I think.
Correct.
And
Then he goes up to the cave
goes
with
up
his.
to the cave, to the mountains.
Right.
He just didn't think while all the fire was coming down, he didn't think he could make it to the mountains. He said, let me
Right.
go to this nearby
That's
city.
what happened.
And then when things quiet down, everybody's dead or whatever,
Right.
I'll keep moving.
So correct, that's right. Hashem Yitzhak Allah's float but Ro. He gets it Tzor. Hashem Him Tiyal Stone Vamor Gofres Veish Meis Hashem and Shemayim. Destroys all the cities, and then Lot. Then we have the story with Lot. He's gone from Vayal Lot Mitzor Vayeshiv Bahar.
Yeah, exactly.
He goes up to the
He's-
mountain.
yeah,
Okay,
goes
so
up to
Tzor
the
I guess was destroyed, and he still escaped. All right. Anyways,
Not gonna work.
I admit it's a little.
Hey,
The timing doesn't seem to fit in, but there you go. And even if it does fit in, it's based upon all these Rashis and Midrashim that had to figure out the times together and the overlapping. Okay, I agree.
yeah.
What do we learn of the SHABBAT 10B Shanim?
I'm sorry?
What do we learn from to know that there was peace for 26 years? We don't mind. That's not teaching.
What do we know is that the whole story of Lot, the whole story of Sodom, which looks like this hedonistic society, everybody's having a good time, only existed with the hedonism and the corruption and the decadence for 26 years. Before that, they had how many years did we say? 40.
12 years they were.
Right, there were 26. There were 26 years before where they were under domination by Kedol Omer and the other kings. They didn't have an easy life. They're fighting it out, and finally, once the war is finished and each city-state goes around their own routine, so for 26 years they had this Roman holiday, so to speak. And you shouldn't think this was such a long period of time. 26 years is a significant piece of time, but as opposed to thinking it went on for hundreds and hundreds of years. There are different chronologies about the Torah. Okay, look, if you have an art scroll Chumash, I don't see one here. One of the good things they did, and I don't know if it dovetails with what we've learned today, is they have a chart of all the generations overlap.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So it's if you when you get to that parsha or whatever it is, you'll see how it just kind of lays out one generation after the other.
But it's like when you realize that, yeah, exactly, there.
I'm sorry. Yes, the end. Well, it's the end of Parshas Noach, but it has the chronology going from Adam all the way down to Yaakov.
You see people
Right,
overlapping large.
and you see people overlapping in large numbers. Right, all the white is the people. So it's not like one person and behind the other and so forth, right? So by the way, just so we understand, not always do we have an easy chronology found in the Torah, correct? And a good example is the book of Shoftim. Shoftim is one judge after another. However, some of the judges overlap. The judges were regional judges. So it's hard sometimes to know what's happening. It doesn't mean that you have to wait for one to die for the next one to pop up. There could have been one wasn't done, like Shimshon, and someone wasn't someone else. There could have been overlapping, could be big gaps between them. So sometimes we don't have this clear chronology, and surely this whole big listing of generations from Bereshis through Noach, the end of Noach, you have these 20 generations, is very difficult to decipher. That's why there's actually a breakthrough. Okay. So at any rate, what does this have to do with anything? Gurnished, okay?
Exactly was said by the same guy.
Except we're saying the same guy. All these statements you'll see are all we've seen. They're all moralistic value statements. And this idea of living in a place, I guess the real point is live in a place that has more tzaddikim and less sinners.
Yeah.
What's the key value? How would you know that when you scout out the neighborhood, the newer the neighborhood has got the less sinners? I don't know. It sounds counterintuitive unless you just say that people just get less into a routine, and when people move to new places, they need to set out who they are. Okay, onwards. Yom Rav Rabba Bar Machas Yom Rav Chama Bar Garai Marav. Kol ir she gagoseha gvol mi Beit HaKnesset lesov charva. Okay, any city that has the roofs of the houses are higher than the shul. No, the shul is lower than the roofs of the houses, will be destroyed in the end. Shenemar, Pasuk says in Ezra, l'romeim es beis Elokeinu u'lahamid es charvosav, to raise up the house of our God and to bring up to standing what was destroyed. This is Ezra rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash.
This is Halachah L'Maisa, isn't it? I remember.
Yeah, we're going to show you what. Yes, it is, because today it's a lot more complicated. By the way, lahavdalel of havdalas. Mosques had the same thing. Christians had the same thing. If you ever go to a little towns, right? The little towns, drive to Ontario. Maybe Ontario is not a good example because the cities are flat. But go to a town that's built on the hill. You will see inevitably on the top of the hill the big church. Right? That was the concept, that you always looked up to the church. Now, I'll give you an example in Yerushalayim where this comes up about the fact that the mosque had to be the highest point. If you know where the bus stops in the Jewish quarter, there's this little square. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Before it starts going down the hill to the Kotel, there's like a little parking area which you can never find a place to park in
What are
there.
you talking about outside, just outside the wall?
In the old
Inside.
old city, right where the Jewish quarter is. If you're coming on that outside arterial road on the outside, in the gates,
It's the Sephardi yeshiva over there.
right, correct. There's a Sephardi yeshivot that are there, but you will see a minaret. Okay? And you say, what is the minaret doing in the Jewish quarter? And the answer is, it's a phony minaret. It was a minaret that was built to be a phony mosque because the Jews wanted to develop the area. And when the Turkish authorities were in control, they needed to kind of build that a mosque would be higher. We're not talking about skyscrapers. We're talking about 1 or 2 story buildings.
of course.
So they built this, I guess, this front mosque, or at least a front minaret that would be higher than all the other buildings. It never was a real minaret. It was simply a way to get around the building code that the minaret had to be higher than all the other buildings in the area.
Why not knock it down?
It's, I guess, historic. But it has never been used. It has never been used to call the faithful to prayer. Not even our faithful. It's right there. It's right there.
It's a very bad symbol.
No, it shows.
It's a historical symbol.
Shows me full.
Yes, right. It actually shows me correct. It shows me full. But I believe I'm correct. That I believe it was built specifically for that because of that rule. So every religion, Lahavdil, has their own
Yeah,
rule that
sure.
their house of worship is the highest one. Correct. They took it from us. Okay. So therefore, the same thing
Where did we get it from?
from Ezra.
Certainly not from Ezra.
I'm sure it was David who wanted to make Beit Hamikdash on the high mountain over there in Yerushalayim.
Yeah. Yes. Correct. We correct. But actually, the base of Mikdash that you think about is Herod,
Right.
who also wanted to make the biggest base of Mikdash that he had. Correct. But you're right. It's built on, and Herod builds up the mountain.
Right.
Right.
But it was positioned by David.
Correct.
Absolutely.
That is true.
Absolutely.
That's correct. And in fact, to kind of re-emphasize that, in the first temple times, and this we know because you know where the city of David is, right? Where's the city of David? Outside Dung Gate.
Yeah.
So in the time of the first base of Mikdash, the city of Yerushalayim was built much differently. It did not have the circumference that we have it. It was going down to Silwan. That was the city, and going up to the top is where the base of Mikdash is and was.
Didn't include the Beit Hamikdash. It only went as far at Ir David. It only went as far as 2,000, 3,000 feet from the Beit Hamikdash.
But the base of Mikdash is clearly the highest point, is what I'm trying to say.
Right,
Because the city's going up like this.
correct.
Because you can argue that in the second temple, it's really the city tends to go down, and then you go up the next mountain.
Correct.
Right. Anyway, so that's a good example. So at any rate, it goes back to the base of Mikdash. Jack is probably correct, and it goes back, and the pasuk of Ezra is really, we always look for a biblical reference, but that's talking about building the base of Mikdash. So it all falls into place. It's saying the same as you. L'romeim base of Elokeinu u'lamid et charvotav. V'hani mili, and the Gemara just simply says v'hani mili b'batim. That's of course what houses. The houses can't be taller. Avol kishkushish v'avruri. Kishkushi is like forts and towers. That were built around to protect the city, less lanbas. So everybody's going to say that you're building a protective security measure, right? You obviously have to have something higher. It's like having, security camera. And then they didn't have security cameras; they had security people, head guards. So if you're going to build that around the base around the shul, higher than the shul, that's not a degradation of shul. That's a protection of the shul. Okay. So, however, on the other hand, building houses that are taller than the basic Knesset is seen as a negative, which is, if it's not a sin, it shows a lack of respect, a lack of city planning, and so forth. So now, Amar Rav Ashi, look at this last piece here, it gets a little twisted. Amar Rav Ashi, Rav Ashi says, Ano avdei lamasya machasya, lamata machasya lo charva. I was careful to make sure that the shuls were higher. In Mata Machasya is one of the major areas in Bavel, in the second part of the time of the Talmud. I made sure the Mata Machasya would not be destroyed. Why? Because I made sure the city builders made the houses smaller or shorter than the shuls and yeshivas and so forth. So the Gemara says, 1 second, the city was destroyed. How could you say you didn't make it? The city wasn't destroyed? So the Gemara says, well, it was destroyed, but not because of the sin of building high buildings higher than the basic Knesset. So at any rate, you see, nothing really saves everything, but at least it becomes in terms of city planning. Now, the truth be told, this is easy to talk about here. It's a major challenge in terms of modern cities. Correct? It always strikes me, if you go to New York or any of the other big cities, how the shuls are squeezed in between, whatever is on the block. You have, this is the communities I grew up in, right? You could have, they don't have to be high rises when I grew up. It could have been like 6-story apartment buildings,
for sure.
and in between 2 6-story apartment buildings, you had a shul, and the shul's only 3 stories.
The Bronx, right?
Of course, the Bronx, but it's not just the Bronx. It was Brooklyn everywhere, right?
Everywhere.
Right. You Lincoln Square Synagogue, which is now built a beautiful shul, It's gorgeous shul. But all around it is mega condos and buildings and office buildings. And this thing, even though it fits glitters now, it's a new shul. It's slower than all the others. So here's a little piece. It talks about building shuls today.
Times change.
Well, here we go. There are actually two pieces on this page. The second one we haven't gotten to yet. Okay, let's see. We have a couple there.
This comes down
There
to
we go.
halacha l'maisa.
Yes,
This
correct.
is like real.
Yes, it is real. Of course, it's real because. Wait, hold on. I mean, let's be honest. The bayit is not taller than the conservatory, than the promenade. There's a perfect example we live with, right? Okay, so this is taken from
When the Bible was built, it may have been.
That's actually probably true. That's probably true. That's correct.
Yeah, it's the only place around here.
When it was built, right?
But the founding fathers of Thornhill let the conservatory get up and let the promenade go and so forth and so on. You're right. It's not the problem with the bayit; it's the other place.
It's not Jewish country.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's true, too.
But you understand where we're going. So, and in more compressed or condensed areas, it really stands out. So here we go. This is from Morris Adaf Hayomi, one of these organizations since stuff out. Here we go. In our Gemara, everybody have? In our Gemara, we learned that any city whose house rooftops is higher than a shul is destined to be destroyed. Based upon this, the Shulchan Aruch and Orach Chaim rules, one builds a shul only at the highest location of the city. It must be built taller than any other building in the city. So if you start at the high place, you're guaranteed it's going to be higher than the other places. The wording of the Shulchan Aruch indicates a second stipulation based on Tosefta. Not only must the shul be taller in its construction, it must be built on the highest place as well. Lahavda, I told you see this today in small town Canada and the United States. Mishnah Berurah, well, not just in Europe as well. Mishnah Berurah comments, some communities do not abide by this halacha. The Achronim justify their practice explaining that we're unable to make the shul the tallest building in the city since many Gentile houses, right, possibly referring to how their house of worship, will unavoidably be taller. Nonetheless, it is proper to abide by this halacha to the best of our ability, since the Gemara warns of a severe penalty for transgressing it. So this is the Mishnah Berurah, which of course written in Poland.
1900.
Well, it's written in the early 1900s. So it's written in Poland by the Chafetz Chaim. It's a summary of really halachic psak in Ashkenazic Jewry. So it's Europe, okay? So we understand that we live with Gentile houses in Europe. Although this justification may have applied in the Mishnah Berurah's time, it's not so applicable today in Israel and many Jewish communities throughout the world where there are no Gentile houses. Surely not here. This is probably Lawrence Bathurst. What other justifications may be found? So how is it possible that today we have shuls that are less tall than houses around them? So one is a building that was converted into a shul. The Zichron Yehuda by Rabbi Yehuda Greenwald Zatzal writes in his Shuvas that when a building was originally constructed for mundane purposes and later converted into a shul, we may be lenient and allow other buildings to be taller than it. Doing so does not detract from the honor of the shul under these circumstances. That's pretty clear, though that doesn't only apply today, probably to a very small number of buildings. Once again, calling back on my Bronx history, I used to, when we were young, I davened in a shul that had originally been a missionary house. It's fascinating, very fascinating. I didn't know that as a kid, and I didn't understand what the steeple really meant on the top, on the edge of the shul. But anyways, okay. So second of all, difference in land elevation. Rabbi Yaakov Emden in Ma'or Ksiyah writes that if because of the difference in land elevation, the shul building is the tallest, but the surrounding buildings built on higher ground reach greater heights, this is not distasteful to the shul. Although stipulated in Tosefta, the severe consequences mentioned in our Gemara don't apply, and therefore, if it's necessary to build the shul on a low place in order to make it more convenient for people to attend, it's permitted to do so. So you have this convenience versus the actual height. Okay, it's sufficient for one to be taller than the houses.
Not all the
Only
shuls,
one
in other
shul.
words.
Right, one doesn't have to be one shul has to be taller than the houses. Which shul? The big shul, obviously. The Ger Rebbe author Sfas Amis writes in his commentary that to our Masechta, this is Shabbos, that it is unnecessary for all the shuls in the city to be taller than the houses. It's enough for one shul to be taller. Which shul would that be? I don't know. It's worth noting that this is a basic disagreement of the Rishonim as how to interpret the Gemara's prohibition against building houses taller than the shul. Correct? Okay.
That's a good question.
So what would that mean? That would mean, by the way, is this the entire city? It's probably refers to the area around it, and probably the fact that the bayit was built as a shul, probably before a lot of the high rises were put up, is probably for this area probably correct. So in other words,
but this is an important thing, because let's say you have a city that has 10, 12 shuls, which any decent city of size,
Right.
everyone's going to be on the highest ground, can't be.
correct.
Right?
But correct. The problem is that most cities have, at least today, have some area where there's a town core that they're very high buildings. So
Yeah,
you may have no shul that's higher than those buildings. But I guess you'd have to say it's probably in the area the shul serves, right? In other words, it doesn't have to be every shul for every area. In the area the shul serves, it's meant to be the highest shul, highest building. And for example, that would apply here. It may apply, for example, it may actually apply in Lawrence and Bathurst, where it's less of a high-rise area. There are high-rises have gone up recently, but it's mostly single-family dwellings. So some of the big mansions down there are bigger than the shuls. Yes, okay.
Very true.
They're taller.
They're taller, for sure they're
it's
taller.
true, it's true.
All right. The use of rooftops. The Meiri maintains that the restriction only applies when high buildings are erected for honor and glory. Then they mustn't be built tall in the shul. However, if they are rebuilt for practical purposes in order to use their space, then it's permitted to build them taller. According to this opinion, it would be permitted to build a multi-story apartment building taller than the shul. Now, this applies to us. However, the Kaf HaChaim, was a Sephardi poskim, cites the poskim do not accept this opinion.
But we didn't use this, all right? The Meiri was outside of halacha for hundreds of years. So we couldn't, we didn't
have them. We didn't have. Well, first of all, it's not true that everything the Meiri wrote was outside of halach was lost. There were svarim, there were books that the Meiri wrote. I know, for example, in the Meiri on brachos we had. So most of what this Meiri wrote was hidden away in the Vatican and other places, and didn't appear as manuscripts until much later. Okay, but by the way, it doesn't mean that the Meiri in his time was not known.
It was Risha at the time of Rashi.
It happens to be that his books were not known. Okay.
But would we know that?
I don't know. There are things quoted about the Meiri in the Middle Ages too, but they may not have had his books. They may have heard about it. And the Meiri writes. The point of the Meiri writes these very large books that are very simple and trying to explain what's going on in the Gemara. It's like very expansive, and all these books were hidden away as manuscripts, were lost as manuscripts. Correct. The Mordechai. Okay, let's go. The Mordechai, this is almost the end of it. The Mordechai cites the opinion of the Smog, which is directly contrary to that of the Meiri. He writes that only in their era, when rooftops were used for practical purposes, it was forbidden to build a roof taller than the shul. However, when the rooftops are not actually used, it is unnecessary for the shul to tower above them. So that's a little bit not as applicable to us. We don't use, it's not about rooftops. We have multi-story condos and apartment buildings and so forth. So there are a number of answers. None of them are really fully explainable. But I guess if you take a combination of any two or three at one point, there might be reasons that we have shuls where they are. On a simplistic way, and I think I'm not sure this is halachic or simply just Yeres speaking. I think there's a difference in the time when you had most simple single-story buildings, and you went out of your way to make the shuls shorter than the single-story buildings, or vice versa, than when you're living in 50-story towers.
Exactly.
Right? That's not possible. So, anyways, but by the clearly, just so we understand this, clearly means to a shul, and it definitely means only to a shul that was built as a shul, and it probably means it has to be one shul or some shuls that are taller, not every shul. And once again, I don't want to talk about my Bronx days too much, but I think I've talked about the fact that as a young lad, I grew up in a house where the landlord was the Rebbe, a real live Rebbe with knickers and white socks and all that, and very anti-Zionist and very very Hasidic, and he was actually an American boy too. And we were the Misnagdim. We lived on the second floor. We were the tenants. We had a tremendous symbiotic relationship, which I never saw again today. But for me as a teenager, it opened the world to me that I couldn't have seen. And in the basement was the shtibel. So there you have the reverse.
It was
You have the reverse, correct? We have the shtibel in the basement because the shtibel. It was a house. It was a two-story house, right? It could have been actually two people could have lived there. First floor
An
family.
official shul building.
Right. So no, this was converted into something and became a shtibel. It's like taking a building like Bitterman's, Rabbi Bitterman's shul. Vateres Mordechai was built as a house, and then it was reconverted into a shul. Okay. Okay. By the way, just tell you about the Lincoln Square Synagogue. It struck me as unusual. You had to go up a level to go to the Beis Medrash.
Right.
I don't know if anyone was ever in there.
The one I think
was
we're
there.
talking about the same
You're
one.
talking about the old one or the
No,
new
the
one?
new one. The new
The new
one.
one is
How new
up,
is the
and
new
all,
one?
everything's
How
up.
new is
I
new?
was in it, let's
upstairs.
say 5-6 years ago, 7-8 years ago.
How new is new? I don't
Yeah,
know.
my
It was like
my daughter
circular,
does.
it was like.
No, the Circular inside, circle on the outside.
Inside.
No.
It's
They still maintain
Inside
half a
our
circle.
quarters of the
Right,
shul.
inside the new shul has it,
They're still
but the
maintaining.
outside is like it's like a monstrosity. It's like
Yeah.
just all this glass.
Yeah.
I think the shul itself is maybe 3 or 4 years old. So I don't know if you were
The
there.
hall
then
is
when-
upstairs.
I don't know. I only went there.
Huge thing.
I was
The
saying
sukkah is
saying
upstairs.
Kaddish and I went to daven Mincha Marav there, and I didn't know where to go. In fact, I didn't even know. I was such a greener. I didn't even know they built a new shul. I'm trying to get into the old shul in the
Did
place.
you say hello to my son-in-law, Daven?
I don't know. This was some evening. I still remember the old shul, which was this white building that was
Yeah,
right.
but it's
So
not-
there I am. I'm looking how to get in. The place is locked up solid with fences around it, boarded up, and I didn't know what to do, where to go.
gonna
So
be
a
a-
cop
it's
came
gonna
to
be
me
a
and saw this.
condo.
Cop came to me and said, "This the new shul's down the block."
So,
So-
I was fortunate. The Shabbos I went there, Rabbi Riskin happened
Oh,
to be
yeah.
visiting.
Very nice.
He
Okay.
gave a drush.
Rabbi Robinson
He
is
gave
there.
Okay.
a drush.
Good.
It was outstanding.
The Great Synagogue is the same thing. It's also one floor up.
Yes. No, this is the Beis Medrash. The Beis Medrash is one floor up in the Great Synagogue, or the shul is one floor up. No, the shul's on the main floor. The Beis Medrash is up.
So that the shul is a few steps up, then you go up a few steps, then you go to the shul.
Right, but the Beis Medrash, like the Beis Medrash here, most shuls are set up that you can run into the Beis Medrash. It's easy access, easy in and out.
There's medrash downstairs.
Where?
You're talking about the great
In
city?
the Great Synagogue.
Correct. But I'm saying in Lincoln Square, it's the reverse. The first story has the main shul. You have to go up to the second story to go to the Beis Medrash. That's unusual. It didn't make that. That's how you build things in that. And when you're davening out the windows, you're davening to the condo across the street. Okay. All right, next thing. He's got a lot to say, okay? Amar Rabba V'Amrachasi Amarav. Chama Amrav Bar Guraya Amarav. Okay? So this is a little more difficult. Not difficult, difficult to understand. Tachas Yishmael, V'lo Tachat Nochri. Better you should be serving a Ishmaelite, right? Not necessarily a Muslim, okay? An Ishmaelite, okay? Right?
What's the difference?
Yeah.
Muslim is a religion, okay? You don't have to be
An Arab.
Ishmaelites and
an Arab, a Bedouin or someone, I don't know. And not following a Nochri. In other words, the Nochrim were considered the Romans. Right, now we use the term Nochri as a generic term, but in this
Right.
case we're talking about the Romans, the Edomites, who were considered vicious and difficult. I know we live in an age where things are reversed, and ISIS is okay and so forth, but this is the world that they lived in the days of Rabbi Rachasya Rav Chaim Bar Goraya. So better to be a servant, not saying a servant is good, but if you got to be a servant to a non-Jew, better being a servant to a Ishmaelite than to a Roman. Tachas Nochri v'lo tachas Chabar. Better to serve a Edomite and not a Chabar. Chabar, according to Rashi, is a group.
Nochri, he's saying, sorry. He said better to serve a...
Best servant. I said an Edomite, right? In other words, a Roman, than to serve it's not Chaver, it's a Chabar,
Chabar.
right? Chabar. So Rashi says these were a nation that came from the Parsaim, and we don't really know who they are, if they're really from the Parsaim or they're near the Parsaim. But the bottom line is, it obviously was a lot more difficult to serve these kind of people. Okay, Tosa says that these were the original Babylonians who lived there when Koresh was there, and they were later supplanted by others. So these were apparently very cruel people, even more cruel than Romans, if you can imagine that. Tach, now here, that makes sense. Okay,
The next sentence.
Next sentence kind of turns it on its head. Tachas chabar v'lo tachas talmud chacham. Better to serve this terribly cruel individual than to have to serve a talmud chacham. Because, in other words, a Talmud Chacham, and I'm not sure I can explain this well enough for everybody to be satisfied, the Talmud Chacham was felt to be a tzaddik, and if you didn't treat the Talmud Chacham well, you would be actually being disrespectful to the Talmud Chacham. So it's difficult in a very different kind of way. One of course, I'm expecting there's going to be a chorus here, but Talmud Chacham should be kind and generous and overlook things and turn the other cheek and all that. And the answer is yes, but there's still a respect you have to give to a Talmud Chacham. So in other words, practically speaking, it's more complex and more challenging to be a servant of a Talmud Chacham. And then it gets even worse. Tachas Talmud Chacham v'lo tachas yasam v'almana. Better to be servant to a Talmud Chacham than to have to serve a orphan or a widow, which once again we know how the Torah is concerned about them. God listens to their cry. So if you're the servant, you have to bring the soup, and the soup is a little hot, a little cold, the soup breaks, the soup is good, whatever, the pot breaks. Woe to you that how challenging it is to really serve them enough that you can do it right, and their pleas will not be heeded by God. Okay, that's it. Can't say much more. V'yamar Rabba Machasi Amarav Chama Bar Goraya Amarav. Kol choli. Okay, once again, this is not halachic. Kol choli v'lo choli me'ayim. Better, you shouldn't be sick, right?
Right.
But if you have to have a long sickness, and choli doesn't simply mean a cough, a cold, a flu. It means something that is a chronic condition.
Chronic.
Okay, so better you should have better any type of chronic condition except a gastrointestinal condition. That's the worst condition that there is, I guess, because whatever it is, you have to eat, right? And if it's hard to digest, how much more difficult it is. Anyone's ever have a stomach upset or a stomach flu?
It's chronic and goes on all the
And
time.
goes on, correct? Well, I mean, look,
Crohn's disease.
Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome. You can go through all of them, right? So, and called ka'ev, a ka'ev is a pain. So better any kind of pain. Better to have a regular any pain except v'lo ka'ev lev, and not a heart pain, right? In other words, that's a heart attack. Okay, that's I guess I'm not sure how to define the heart attack, but I guess it's sharp jabbing pains. Okay. Better to have kol mechush v'lo mechush rosh. Mechush is like an ache. So better to have any kind of ache and not to have a migraine headache, an ongoing migraine headache. Kol ra'ah, and here it gets, I'm sure this, we're just going to do this, and please do not ask me to explain. Kol ra'ah, v'lo isha ra'ah. Better to have any kind of evil except a woman who is evil. What can I say?
Hey, many people would agree that a vindictive woman might be, if there is one, you
Right.
say, you're not saying an ordinary woman, you're saying some vicious woman.
Right. Okay. Right, it's true.
It's better to have a what than a good?
Any evil is better than having an evil dealing with an evil woman.
Any evil?
Any bad thing.
Let's say.
I don't like bad food, bad clothing, bad car. You have a bad car, the car doesn't work. You have bad shoes, I don't know. Whatever you have that's bad, it's not as bad as having a bad wife.
There's
Okay,
all kinds of bad stuff.
that's true. But he says the worst is, the fabisna chalaria, right?
Exactly.
Well, you could,
Hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn.
You could, correct? That's true. If you have a bad car, you can sell it. Or if you have a bad set of pants, you get a different set of pants.
Severe sickness, God forbid, you can't get rid of
Well,
it.
so it's not talking about sickness, it's talking about bad.
That's sick, so just
It's talking about bad. In other words, yes,
Already
of course.
took care of sickness
Okay,
before.
okay. Oh, once again, guys, I don't know I can explain anymore. This is all Rav Chaim Bar Machasiam,
But the thing he's claiming that Rav said all these things, right? He's only quoting, isn't he?
He's the collector of Rav's little statements
what
that he
I'm
must have
saying,
said at the
right?
beginning at the end of every year.
Because he's
And
not
all
the
the-
guy that I knew so well, but Rav is a different story.
I don't know. So, but obviously he had a special relationship with Rav. All this,
Really?
these guys they would write down all the jokes and shit. He wrote down all the little quips. Okay, and you saw before that Rav's statement was beloved to who was it again?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Who did he? Yeah.
Rav, I forget who it
I loved
was.
him so much. If he said, I forget who it was.
Yeah, Rav Chisda.
Yes.
Rav Chisda. Okay, so now let's go on. Vam Rav Machasiam Rav Chama Bar Goraya Amarav. Im you call hayamim the yo. If all of this sounds like akdamas, but it's not. If all the seas were ink. Yeah, but you okay, but that's about praising God.
Right.
Right, if all the ink and the pens, we couldn't really praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the good that He does to us, which is what Akdamas is, praise God, and then talks about Har Sinai. So if all the and by the way, Akdamas, just so we understand it, Akdamas is later than this. So the analogy or the simile to talk about the quills and the lakes and the people and everything is really coming from this Gemara, except twisted a little bit. So if all the lakes or seas were ink, va'agamim kulmosim, and agamim are swamps, which has these bulrushes, these tall swamp grasses, where kulmus is a pen. We think of using pen for a quill, but you also had reeds that they would use as pens. V'shamayim yirios, and the heavens were paper. Yirios is like the parchment piece, the big piece of parchment on the Sefer Torah. V'chol b'nei adam lavlorim, and all the people were writers or scribes. Ein maspikim lichtov chalala shel rashus, not rashus. You couldn't write and understand the chalala, like the opening or the inside, the underpinning of how the government works. In other words, politics is so complex, right?
It's so corrupt.
Well, this is not about corruptness as much as the fact that there are many different facets in how political officials make decisions. You have a decision, you have a need. Any decision is going to make someone happy and someone unhappy, even in an elected society. Surely when you had a society that was ruled by a monarchy or a dictator. So, but having said that, this is trying to turn it the other way around. That these guys have a really difficult time. You can't imagine how difficult things really are. Maybe it's not much different than our modern society, which has a whole lot of complexities. These poor guys, what they do, they went to learn. If they weren't learning, they were horse. They drove their horse. They pulled the water. They were carpenters. That's fairly direct. There's a lot of abstract thinking that you need to maintain society. So if everybody could write, we still couldn't write an encyclopedia about government. Okay, social philosophy it's called. My Kara, what's the pasuk? There's always got to be a pasuk, and you see that he has psukim to refer to. Amar Sharsha, it says Shamayim larum, the heavens are up high, the aretz laomek, and the earth is very deep. This is from Mishlei v'leiv malachim ein cheker, and the hearts, the thinking of kings ein cheker. No one can really understand what that is. Okay, so that's really what we're saying there. Okay,
Right.
All right. Got one more piece of Rav. Should we want to stay for 5 minutes and do this?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, we're supposed to, we started late, right?
Right, we started late, so we don't get to the Mishnah. The last piece of the Mishnah deals with the last piece of Gemara deals with the Mishnah itself. But at least we'll finish all the Rav Chama bar Garayas. Yom Rav Machas Yom Rav Chama bar Garaya Marav. Yafet Tanis lachalom ke'esh l'neoret. If a person had a dream, now I want to be clear that most of our dreams today do not fall in this category. Most of the dreams that you have, in fact, I say all the dreams that you have, are dreams that you're thinking about during the day. The mind kind of squiggles around and plays itself out. The brain, they think the brain actually rejuvenates itself by all the dream sleep that we have. So, but there is this concept that sometimes there were dreams that great people had, that things were being told to them, and they were premonitions. People came to them, they came to them a second time, a third time, but sometimes there were scary kinds of dreams. You ever have this kind of scary dreams? You wake up,
Scary dreams.
right? You still wake up, but you don't really play, right? But when you think about it, you realize where it came from.
Yeah.
Correct? But there was a belief that certain great people could have dreams that God was trying to give them a little bit of a nevuah. And if it was not a happy ending, so you wanted to kind of say, well, there's a meaning, I need to change. How would you change? The best way to change is to fast. Right? And fasting was considered to be ameliorative.
Right.
So therefore, if you have this chalom, this bad chalom, and you really think it has something to say to you, how do you kind of change it? You fast. So yafet tanas lechalom, fasting for this kind of bad dream is ke'esh l'nur. It's like fire gobbles up the leftover flax, the leftover stubble of the flax, which was dried up. In other words, the fire would burn into a crisp, there'd be nothing left. So fasting would remove this. So even though the fasting is considered destructive, or the fasting is considered difficult, and we fast on Yom Kippur, we fast on Tisha B'Av, this fasting was actually made you feel better. So this was a fast that actually was considered an enjoyable fast because it got rid of the bad dream, right? So and v'amrav chistav v'ubo bayom, that only works if it's the very same day. You wake up in the morning, you had this dream, you have to fast that day.
Right.
If you say, well, I got to go to work today, I'll do it over the weekend, it doesn't help. It's got to be right there to kind of nip it in the bud.
Right.
The Amarav Yosef Afila b'Shabbos. Even if it's Shabbos is the day you wake up with this,
You still
which is the halachic statement, by the way, that this tainis chalom, people can't fast on Shabbos. You can't really have tsar. This is not considered tsar; it's considered a miliriv. Okay, so it's helpful. And we have a following case that happened. Who said this, by the way? Of course, Rabbi Machas Yom Rav Chama Rav Gurai Marav.
Rav Yosef is the one who said Afil b'Shabbos.
Rav Chisda said Baba Yom Rav Yosef even b'Shabbos. Correct. And this is quoted lahalacha.
Right,
Okay.
we're studying Shabbos
Right.
in theory.
Correct. So it does bring it back into Shabbos. Woohoo. Okay. But the bottom line is, I don't want you to go home and think that these dreams apply to you necessarily. There's a lot written in the postscript that this is a one time. These things don't happen today. Like once upon a time there was real Nevi'im. Now there are no real Nevi'im. People think they're Nevi'im, right? They're fools. But there may be Ruach HaKodesh, but that doesn't happen that frequently. So the dreams that you and I have do not necessarily fall into this category, and you're not necessarily required to fast if you have this terrible dream. So at any rate, here's the following story. Rav Yoshua braid Rav Idi, Ikla lebei Rav Ashi. So Rav Yoshua was visiting Rav Ashi, to the house of Rav Ashi. Avdile Igla Tilta. He made him Igla Tilta is a very fat kind of calf. It usually means like the third born calf. In other words, or it's either a third born calf or a calf that's 1/3 grown. If it's 1/3 grown, it's like saying it's veal, it's young. right? If it's the third calf, it means the more calves the cow gave birth to, the better was the product, okay? So, but this is a term that comes up in a number of Gemaras, meaning this are real super delicacies, like, you got a real good corned beef. So Amalei, so Rav Yeshua comes, and Rav Ashi serving out this good barbecue. He says, Litomar Midi, you should have some. Quick, Rav Yeshua, this is great stuff. It's a Igla Tilsa. So Amalahu, so Rav Yeshua says back, Batanis Yasifta, I'm sitting in a tinus. So I'm fasting today, I can't have it. So Amrulay, so they said to him, I guess Rav Ashi and his buddy said to him, V'lo Savalemar, don't you hold Lahad Rav Yeshua, what Rav Yehuda said, the Rav Yehuda, Lova Adam Tanisa Porea. If you're fasting for a private fast, you can lend against it. Eat today, fast tomorrow. You can't do that with Yom Kippur, you can't do it on Tisha B'Av, but private fasts, you can change one for the other. You wanted to fast as a sign of tshuva. So today you had this, so something came up, that's juicy corned beef, eat the corned beef and fast tomorrow.
Right.
So Amalei, so Rabbi Yeshua said back to him, Tanis Chalom hu. It's a Tanis Chalom. The Amar Rabba bar Machas, Yom Rav Chama, Bar Graim Rav, Yafa Tanis Chalom, Keish L'Noren. Okay? So it's that this is the, and Yom Rav Chis, and what Rav Chis to say? Uba Yom. V'yom Rav Yosef afil b'Shabbos. Rav Yosef said even on Shabbos, so that's why I can't change the day. Okay, before we break, I gave you this handout a moment ago, right?
Yes.
Still, guys, still got it? Yes. There's the second piece on the page, right? The last, the Daily Marshal. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know where I swiped this from. Daily Marshal. The Gemara states that a fast is good for a dream, and the fast should occur on the day of the dream, even if it occurs on Shabbos. If one does fast on Shabbos for a dream, he should fast again on. I'm sorry. Okay. If one does fast on the day of the dream, he should fast on Shabbos. He should fast again on a different day because he afflicted himself on Shabbos. So you have to make up the fast. Plus, it looks like you have to fast an extra day for Shabbos. Rashi explains the reason one can fast for a dream on Shabbos is because it relieves his pain. The Rishonim write that nonetheless one should fast in atonement for having fasted on Shabbos, because although he had pleasure of fasting on Shabbos to relieve his pain, it's preferable to light properly in the Shabbos than to fast on Shabbos. So therefore, if you are going to fast because of a Tainus Chalom and it's Shabbos, right? So you have
fast,
to,
you can,
and you have to do another fast, all right? This being the case, one should contemplate the beautiful gift of the Shabbos that Hashem bestowed on His chosen nation. One should certainly not intentionally cause himself and others distress on Shabbos. And specifically for this reason, that we recite the Berachos Hamazon on Shabbos, the prayer V'lo Yesehei Tzarav Yagon V'Anacha B'Yom Menucha Seinu. Hashem's will should be no distress, grief, or lament on this day of our contentment. So you should never have to fast. You shouldn't have to fast in these kind of cases. God should keep us and have a restful Shabbos and so forth and so on. Okay.
Shavuos, I know for a fact that even on Chalom, it's the only holiday that you're forbidden to fast.
Shavuos?
Of all the
Maybe.
holidays.
Maybe I have to look it up. I'll have to look it up. Could be.
You know, once I heard.
You wonder why.
Maybe. I don't know, because Matan Torah.
Cheesecake.
Okay. Okay, so where does that take us up? So just to remind ourselves,
Yes.
we're off for 2 weeks.
Right.
We're off. We're not going to meet for 2 weeks. This coming week is Victoria Day, and a week after that I'm driving for Shavuos, so I'll be away. I'm driving that night.
Right.
So then we'll come back, and I think it's June the 4th, I think it is, or the 5th or something like that. So by the way, we have one piece left that takes us back to Mafsikin L'Kriyat Shema, all these things that you have to break from Mincha and so forth. And then we come to that next Mishnah, which talks about all the things that you couldn't do on Erev Shabbos because you were afraid that you may continue to do. Well, in this case, it could be like carrying something, or we'll find out that the chayat, the tailor, had a needle they would carry with them, right? Like you should probably see that where they would keep the needle in there or something. So it's Erev Shabbos. Before Shabbos, he shouldn't walk out with that in his pocket, right? Because what'll happen?
He'll run into somebody,
Not he'll run into somebody, he'll forget it, and he'll be out, so he won't be able to be carrying on Shabbos. Now he's going to stick someone, but he's going to get stuck on Shabbos. So a number of these examples will come up. Okay?
I didn't mean run in and stick. I meant run in somebody needs a quick little.
No, but if
hatchet.
either that or he will. No, so that it looks like the concern is more. These people walked around with these, right? Like the carpenters always used to have the pencil and the right and so forth. Okay, we'll stop here. Have a great Victoria Day, and if we don't get together, I don't see you. Have a wonderful, meaningful Shavuos because we're going to meet together afterwards. Thank you.